Good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll just let a few more people come in. There we go. Lovely. Oh, bit of an influx. There we are. It's going to be a very busy webinar today, so this is exciting. Before we get started and get into the guff of today's content, I just would like to remind everybody that this is an interactive space. We don't obviously have audio on for everyone, but we do have the Q&A section open. And we do encourage people to put your questions in. We're here to help you understand embedded networks and to help you in your situations. So if anything that Gail is saying today resonates, or you go, oh, actually, that I need a question about this particular thing, please pop it in the Q&A. If we get to it while we're chatting, we will, and whatever we don't get to, we will address at the end. If the questions become very specific to yourself, we don't encourage you to share very personal details in this space. So, my name is Sally and I live at 123 this village and this is my concern. Probably don't do that, more broader questions. But if you do have very specific concerns about your own situation, we can tic-tac with you after this and get you some support there. All right. So I am Kayleen. I'm from Council on the Ageing. We are joined here today with Gail from the Queensland Ombudsman's Office. So thank you so much for joining us. I'm going to broach my first technical challenge and share my screen. So stick with me, everybody. And I think we're on. Are we on? Brilliant.
Yep.
All right, so I would like to open today's webinar by acknowledging the traditional owners of the lands in which we meet today. We'd also like to acknowledge and pay respects to elders past, present, and emerging, and also welcome any Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people joining us today. Thank you so much. A little quick introduction on who are Council on the Ageing. So Council on the Ageing are the peak body for older Queenslanders. We've been established since 1957. We've been a champion for, it's in my way and I'm reading it, that's okay. We've been a champion for seniors advocating for policies and services that improve their quality of life. As Queensland's population ages, Council on the Ageing Queensland play a vital role in ensuring the voices of older people are heard in policy development and in community conversation. So we will share our website at the end of this. So if you haven't heard of us or would like some more information, please visit us there. The Energy for Seniors program is delivered in partnership with ARQRV, or the Association of Residents of Queensland Retirement Villages. They were formed in 1992. They are the peak body advocating for the rights and interests of residents in Queensland retirement villages. They are a member-based non-profit organisation. So if you do live in a retirement village, you can become a member of ARQRV, and they are another body to support in any concerns. At this point, I'm going to pass over to the expert, our lovely Gail. So thank you so much. Yeah, take it away, Gail.
Thanks, Kayleen. My name's Gail and I work for the Energy and Water Ombudsman Queensland in the Customer Resolution and Engagement team. So we'll just start today with our acknowledgement of country. So the Energy and Water Ombudsman acknowledge the traditional owners and their custodians of the lands, seas and waters of Queensland. We pay our respects to First Nations elders past and present and their future leaders who continue cultural and spiritual connections to country, and recognise and respect their valuable contributions to Australia and global society. So today we'll be talking about embedded networks. We will touch on who we are, so how to get help with your energy and water complaint before moving on to the embedded network section. In that segment, we'll talk about network requirements, retail requirements, some rights and protections for consumers, as well as concessions and rebates, the types of concessions and rebates that you might be eligible for, some of the new rules that were introduced in the latest version of the guidelines and the variation to some of those rules. We've also thrown in a brief slide about pricing because that seems to be a popular topic, as well as how to contact us, some resources, and then a space for questions at the end. So, so the Energy and Water Ombudsman Queensland is a free and independent dispute resolution service. So we help people resolve complaints with their electricity, gas, or water company. We also aim to provide equal access to a free, timely, and just way of referring disputes and having those disputes investigated and resolved. So if you are a residential or small business energy customer anywhere in Queensland, a residential electricity customer within an embedded network, or a water customer in Southeast Queensland, you're invited to contact us to see if your service provider is a member of our scheme and how we might be able to help. So this is just a little slide about how you can get help with your energy or water complaint.
Alrighty. You want me to hit play now?
Yes, please.
Ever had a problem with your energy or water provider and weren't happy with the outcome? That's where we come in. The Energy and Water Ombudsman Queensland is a free, fair and independent dispute resolution service. Our job is to help Queensland consumers and small businesses get a fair outcome when they haven't been able to resolve an issue with their energy or water provider. We can help with a range of issues. Maybe you got a bill that's bigger than expected, or it just doesn't make sense. You might be struggling to pay a bill on time or are having trouble managing your debts. Your rebates and/or concessions may be missing. Or there may be trouble with your property being disconnected, just to name a few. If you've got a problem, you need to talk to your provider first and give them a chance to offer a solution. If that doesn't work, you can check our website to see if your provider is part of our scheme. If your provider is part of our scheme, you can send us a complaint and we will help you reach an outcome that is fair and reasonable. Our amazing team are Queensland-based just like you, so we understand your local landscape. If we can't help, we can point you in the right direction. Whether you want to check your understanding, see what options are available, or need a helping hand, we're here for you. We make it easy for you to get in touch with a bunch of different options depending on what works for you. Get in touch with us today. Visit ewoq.com.au or call 1800 662 837, online, phone or in person.
There we are. Thanks, Kayleen. So embedded networks, if we can flick onto that next slide. So if you're living in an embedded network, how will you know? So you will probably receive your electricity bill from a body corporate, a landlord, or a third-party agent who is not a regular electricity retailer. So sometimes we refer to embedded networks as exempt networks. This is usually because the owner or operator or even the seller are exempt from certain requirements. They usually won't need to register their activities with the Australian Energy Market Operator. For the most part, residents in embedded networks will have their own individual meter. And this is the type of embedded network that we'll probably focus on today. Some embedded networks will not have individual meters, and the electricity costs will be shared amongst residents according to a formula that's specified by the embedded network owner. There are two very distinct functions in relation to energy networks. They provide the electricity or gas in the network, so for that premise or the village, if you're in one, and that network will not be owned or managed by the local distributor like Energex or Ergon. We also have the selling component. So the person who sells the energy and bills residents will do so in a similar way to retailers like Ergon, AGL, and Origin. That, you know, the way that they bill for their on-market customers.
Mm-hmm.
So the first focus is on the network requirements. So this is about the supply of the electricity to the end consumer. So anyone who owns or controls or operates equipment that's used to convey electricity to another person is likely supplying electricity under the national electricity law and national electricity rules. So embedded or exempt networks are connected either directly or indirectly to the national grid, and they're usually via a parent connection point. An exemption is appropriate in circumstances where supply of electricity is incidental to a person's main business and usually supports another more significant relationship, such as landlord-tenant. Now, when we look at network exemptions, there are three categories of exemptions. So a deemed is one that is automatically applied, and it's usually for very small arrangements, so fewer than 10 customers. Registrable is an embedded network owner who applies to register their arrangement with the Australian Energy Regulator, and an individual exemption applies to anyone else. The AER also then uses a numbering system to group common types of activities under each category. So as example, NR4 refers to people who are supplying metered or unmetered electricity in caravan, residential and manufactured homes parks. NR3 will refer to people who supply to residents in retirement village, both metered and unmetered. And ND2 refers to people supplying metered or unmetered electricity to fewer than 10 residential customers within a site. There are currently 3,177 registered network exemptions in Queensland. The number of deemed exemptions remains unknown. For retail, which is about the selling of electricity to you, the National Energy Retail Law covers the sale of electricity. Retail law requires energy sellers to obtain a retailer authorisation unless energy selling is incidental to their main business. In these situations, the seller may be eligible for an exemption. So these are the situations like retirement villages, manufactured home parks, and caravan parks. Regulatory requirements for exempt sellers are lighter than those of authorised retailers, but the core conditions are based on consumer protections under National Energy Retail Law. Exempt sellers will look to the AER's Retail Exempt Guideline for any restrictions, conditions and terms, and that Retail Exempt Guideline includes 28 conditions. Different conditions apply to different classifications of registered embedded networks. So as example, R3, which is for retirement village owners, they will need to provide 5 business days notice of a change to tariffs. But if I live in a network where the seller is R4 class, like a caravan park, a manufactured home park, those tariff changes might be applied to my bill retrospectively and without notice. Another example is a D6 seller who doesn't need to publish a meter start and end read on their bill. So currently we know there are 2,478 registrable retail exemptions in Queensland. The number of deemed ones again remains unknown. Some of the rights and protections. So the retail exemption category and class will determine the associated conditions and consumer protections for you. To demonstrate how this works, we'll look to the R4 class. So that relates to persons selling metered energy in caravan parks, residential parks and manufactured homes estates, which are also known as residential land lease communities. And these are for customers who principally reside there. So currently there are 230 class R4 exemptions registered in Queensland. An R4 seller must adhere to 26 of the 28 conditions published in the Retail Exempt Selling Guideline. So this specifies that exempt customers should be offered flexible payment plan arrangements, directed to information about energy efficiency, government and non-government energy rebates, concessions and relief schemes. They should also be provided a copy of the seller's hardship policy, given information about any right they might have to purchase energy from a retailer of their choice. They will be offered at least 2 payment methods, one which is able to be effected without internet, receive a bill at least once every 3 months, and be protected from disconnection where life support equipment depends on energy for its operation. We also know that they should all be informed of their right to escalate a dispute to the Energy Ombudsman.
And that disconnection thing, it was brought up previously, so I'll just mention that here. That's obviously for planned, so people who are unable to pay their bills or planned outages. Obviously, if there's a natural disaster and the power goes out, nobody can foresee that. So
yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Kayleen. So for concessions and rebates, owners and proprietors of residential home parks or multi-unit residences are still required to advise residents that electricity and gas rebates are available and claim the rebates on behalf of those eligible residents. So the rebate is available if the exempt seller supplies electricity and or reticulated natural gas and charges residents based on metered supply. The exempt seller must not hinder a customer's attempts to establish eligibility, and if a rebate can only be claimed by the operator on behalf of the customer, the exempt seller must make that claim. The electricity bill should reflect any amount deducted, credited, or received under a rebate payment scheme or arrangement. And both the electricity and reticulated natural gas rebates are applied daily and should never exceed the amount charged for the supply. Upon closing an account, residual credits should always be refunded. The other important part is where an application has been made for payment assistance to an organisation or government department, the customer should be protected from any disconnection until the outcome is known. For other types of concessions and rebates, so in addition to the Queensland Government ones, there is also the energy bill relief and the cost of living rebate. So these were also extended to residents of embedded networks, provided they met the requirements. The exempt seller in those communities is responsible for lodging the claim, and there was obviously a bit of a delay in that process as well. The Home Energy Emergency Assistance Scheme. So this is a scheme for Queensland households who experience payment difficulties because of an unforeseen emergency or short-term financial crisis that occurred within the past 12 months. To start this process, customers must first speak with their energy seller who determines eligibility to apply. The process in embedded networks differs slightly because the exempt seller or embedded network operator cannot generate an application number. So all the applications are done manually. They can't proceed through the online application. We also know there's a medical cooling and heating electricity concession scheme. So this one is not administered by the exempt seller. However, the exempt seller may be required to provide evidence to support the application.
Okay.
On the 29th of August this year, the AER released a new version of the Retail Exempt Selling Guideline. So in this guideline, we saw some new conditions that were introduced, which required certain classes of exempt seller to develop, implement, maintain, and comply with a family violence policy for residential and small business customers. They now need to include contact details for the exempt residential customers Energy Ombudsman scheme on their bills. They need to keep their authorised representatives' contact details up to date with the Australian Energy Regulator. Publish tariffs and charges and a percentage comparison to the local area retailers standing offer price on their agent's website, or display the information in a communal area if they don't have a web page. They will also need to provide 5 business days notice before any variation of tariff takes effect. And once aware, use best endeavours to refund any customer credits upon termination of their energy supply agreement. So all these rules weren't introduced effective immediately. Some of these will be delayed till the 1st of July 2026. And that's so people, sellers can get their systems up to date and have these things readily available for their customers.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Variation to some rules. So some elements of the AER guideline conflict with Queensland legislation. So in these cases, the Queensland government legislation applies. As example, the pricing condition in the guideline has 5 sub-conditions. Now, we don't expect that all sellers will be able to comply with each one. This is mainly because some exempt sellers are subject to the Residential Tenancies and Rooming Accommodation Act and the Manufactured Homes Residential Parks Act. So these acts might place further restrictions on the seller from recovering more than they pay to supply the electricity. So in these sorts of situations, the seller may actually need to wait to receive their own bill and then calculate the tariff price for that period. And because the service has already been supplied, those tariffs are applied retrospectively and no advance notice can be given.
Mm-hmm.
The guideline does not require the seller to provide a copy of their own bill to support their tariffs. However, those other acts might make it necessary for the seller to provide or display their electricity invoice. Condition 7 pricing. So this one is quite common. We do get a lot of inquiries about it. So, and I will say verbatim, the AER guideline says Class R4 sellers need to adhere to an exempt seller must not charge the exempt customer tariffs that are higher than the standing offer price that would be charged by the relevant local area retailer for new connections. If the local area retailer were to supply that quantity or estimated quantity of energy directly to the premises of the exempt customer. So if you lived in a community that was connected to an Energex distribution network, the price we would use as comparison is the Origin Energy standing offer price. So currently that is $1, 1.4287 per day and 35.24 cents per kilowatt hour exclusive of GST. So some R4 customers might receive a bill where the daily supply and usage are not separated. Usage might be charged as 48.52 cents per kilowatt hour. So at face value, it looks like the customer is being charged more than the standing offer price of 35.24 cents. However, because the daily supply has not been itemised separately, 48.52 cents is the bundled rate. So unbundled, we could demonstrate how the cost is lower than the standing offer price of Origin Energy. So you might ask why someone would bundle the rate. Well, some of the R4 class sellers will need to consider the Queensland Manufactured Homes Act, which states that the separate charge by the park owner must not be more than the cost of supply for the use of the utility. So the most efficient way for those entities to calculate their tariffs is to simply divide the total cost of their bill by the number of kilowatt hours recorded at the gate meter. Now we've just moved on to how to contact us. So we didn't have a lot else to talk about. I don't know if you've got any questions there, Kaylee.
I've got a few, yeah.
Yep.
So, there's one that's come through already that says a retirement village with an embedded network loses power for 4 days. Who is responsible for getting the power to the people with health issues?
Yeah, that's a tricky one. So it will be the embedded network owner who will be talking to Energex or Ergon because they have the responsibility at the gate meter, the parent connection point. They have that. So the network has the obligation to supply, and you've got those reliability and outage provisions in some of that different legislation that applies to them. So obviously, until that power is reconnected at the gate, nobody can get power beyond that connection point. So it is the owner of the network, that private network, that needs to be liaising with the distribution business.
Right. So, yeah, it's their responsibility to liaise with Ergon or Energex, whoever it is. But then the ultimate, I mean, you can only move as fast as Ergon or Energy.
Yeah, absolutely. And they would, they will have their priorities depending on who's connected with, in the network. But bearing in mind that everybody beyond that point is invisible.
Yeah.
So it really, it's really up to that network owner.
Yeah. At the beginning, you mentioned that if people who live in an embedded network, the embedded network on behalf of those residents will apply for the concessions that were available.
Yep.
So obviously all of that money goes to the embedded network owner.
Yep.
And then they would, for math's sake, let's say there's 10 villages, 10 houses, and they get all that money. Does each individual person of unit 1, 2, 3, 4, do they have, I guess, ownership over their own concession? So if they were to sell or to move or to leave, do they get anything that was unspent, or does that stay with the embedded network?
So so when we talk about the Queensland government rebate, so that's that amount that's applied daily. I think it's up to about 300, and I had this written down somewhere, about $386 a year, but it's applied as a daily rate. And if a customer in embedded network receives a monthly bill, it might be for $20. They will never get the true value of the full $384. And it's not like that money then sits there waiting for them to leave and they're entitled to it, because they're not entitled to anything above what they are paid, what they are charged.
Yeah.
So there's a whole reconciliation that goes on in the background, and no money is ever changing hands. These are credits that go to the main account holder's invoice, and those credits are then passed on to the residents that are eligible inside.
Yeah.
It differs when we have those big rebate schemes. So the cost of living rebate, each resident that was eligible received the full $1,000.
Mhm.
When they leave, that full $1,000, whatever's remaining, is theirs to take with them.
Yeah. Okay. And that obviously management of that is to be managed by the embedded network owner. They have to be accountable to know how much of that they've used for that person's bill.
Oh, absolutely. Because
Yeah.
so when we're talking, if you're talking about the cost of living rebate, the $1,000, as soon as that bulk credit landed on their retail bill, so let's say their origin bill for the gate meter, they were then to administer it straight to each resident's bill. So that resident should have seen cost of living rebate $1,000. And
Mhm.
then as their electricity charges come off that, that remaining residual balance will carry over from bill to bill.
Okay. That's good to know.
Yeah.
Okay, we've got a bunch coming through. So there is a person who's asked us to go through the last two slides again. So we will do that. We'll get through some of these questions and
Yeah,
then
yeah.
back to them. Um, does the embedded network owner have an obligation to show residents how they calculated resident electricity charges on each bill?
So that sounds like that, even the bundled or unbundled, there's nothing in our legislation that says that they need to break down that cost.
Mhm.
So if they were only subject to the guidelines, that condition 7 pricing, as long as that price does not exceed that Origin Energy standing offer, we're happy.
Okay.
When we look at the other legislation, they might have to support their own, provide that invoice to support how they're breaking down those charges. But there's nothing in our legislation that says that needs to happen.
Okay. And then somebody else has written that it was deemed, you defined deemed as fewer than 10 customers. This person is in a situation with exactly 10. Does that mean that it cannot be deemed because they're
Absolutely. Yeah. So as soon as we get above 10, so 10 plus, they must register with the AER. So it's interesting because someone will register with the AER, but the AER does not vet what they're registering for.
Mhm.
But definitely, if someone came to me and they said there's 10 of us in a unit block, I should be able to find that address on the Australian Energy Regulator's website.
Okay. Okay. Also, everyone, as we're talking, thank you for the questions. If we have answered a question and the answer prompts another question, please feel free to pump them through. Um, so are retirement villages excuse me, are retirement village operators allowed to charge a separate supply charge?
They can unbundle the rate. Yes. Yes. Yep. And that again comes back to that, conflicting legislation. So the bundling makes it easier for them.
Yeah.
But, if someone was to leave the embedded network, so go and choose a retailer of their choice, we would expect that operator to know what the network component is of that price because they would then receive two bills.
Okay.
Yeah. Which probably gets a bit complicated if we went down that rabbit hole. But yeah, they
Because
don't
even if
have to
they're
separate
with
them.
someone else, we'll call them ABC. I'll call
Mm.
them AGL just because
Yeah, yeah, that's easy.
just
Yeah.
for clarity. So if they then choose to go with AGL, but
Mhm.
the electricity is still being supplied through the village,
Yep,
then you would get a supply charge through the village, but no electricity bill, but you would get an electricity bill through AGL.
absolutely. So the whole concept is that you can choose a retailer of your choice, but it's not about the network component. So they get an energy only offer from a retailer if they can, if this can happen, and then they get a network bill from the person who owns that network.
Okay. Okay. And then we've got a question about solar here, which is not, and we talked about this a little bit prior. So this person has said, can we talk please about embedded networks and solar? Some village owners will not permit residents to install solar panels. Is this something to do with the energy supplier not permitting solar to feed into the grid? So, yeah, this is not something it's not the first time we've heard this, but some of
Yep.
the reasons that residents have been given is that the retailer doesn't want any more feed in from that village, so they're saying no more. Others are being told it's a cosmetic thing. I mean, there's all different reasons, but
Right.
can you
Okay.
shed some light onto
There
what's happening?
definitely is a restriction at the gate connection, so where that parent meter sits. Most embedded networks will have been capped at, I think it's 33 kV. So once the network gets at capacity, nobody else can have solar. Nobody can then go and, add more panels or increase their inverter size. So there definitely is a limit. Each park, when any new person applies, must do an audit. So they need to make sure that they already haven't exceeded the capacity. And this is how we're finding at the moment. People are identifying that their networks have already exceeded the capacity and they didn't even know. So it definitely is a thing at the connection point where it's a restriction, and usually to upgrade can be a lot of money for the embedded network operator.
And bonus question just from myself, if somebody was in a position to do like batteries, if they wanted to do batteries, would that negate that? Because then I guess the energy in my head, the energy goes to the battery, not to the network, or is that still?
Well, yeah, it's all behind the meter, and I believe it has to do with the capacity. So say you wanted to add a 5 kilowatt array, and you said, but it's okay, I'm not going to export, I'm just going to hit to my battery. If something happens to that, relay in your home and the battery's not working, you still have the capacity to feed it out to the grid. And so they have to think about what capacity is in the network to go to the grid at any given moment in time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And then we've got a few. I'm just trying to pick which ones. Someone has said, is it general practice for an energy retailer to pay any sales commissions direct to embedded network owners? Is it general practice for energy retailers to pay sales commissions to embedded network owners?
So you might be talking about because they are big sites, it would be advantage. I suppose there would be an advantage in, someone coming and approaching you and saying, hey, if you take us, we can, do this thing. A lot of people that are large market will use their own energy brokers. And I don't know what happens as part of that relationship, whether the broker, like any broker, may receive some sort of money. But definitely the whole idea of the embedded network is they're getting a really good price at the meter, no matter how it comes to them. Yeah.
And sometimes they get, we've done a couple of talks in some villages around the place, and some of their rates that they get for the bigger villages are really good.
Really good. Yeah. And that saving is passed on. Although, where they're getting, they might, let's just use 7 cents. So even though they might have to pay 7 cents per kilowatt hour here, it doesn't mean they have to charge people 7 cents per their kilowatt hour, because they also have all those other fees that come with a large market connection that need to be recovered. So, but residents will still receive the benefit of them having such a small usage charge.
Okay. And then just jumping back to before with the two supply charges, if they charge a separate supply rate, should the usage tariff then be reduced?
So you're saying in like an R4 class site, and someone is selling an unbundled rate. So they're saying your usage is 33 cents and your supply is $1. We would still, if you are only looking to our legislation, we would still expect both of those rates to be less than that origin energy rate. So it doesn't mean because they've unbundled it that you're going to get you would expect to see a discount or anything else. As long as they remain below those two costs of energy, of origin energy, then they're adhering to that pricing condition.
Okay, great. And then we've got a question about smart meters. So will the smart meters ever be required for embedded networks? And if so, who will pay this cost?
Yeah. So there is a smart meter rollout at the moment that people might have heard or seen on the TV. That does not extend to embedded networks currently. That is for NEM, so the National Electricity Market. So embedded network customers are invisible to the NEM. And the reason behind this is because embedded network owners and operators, for the most part, can't profit, depending on what acts that they have to look to. So for them to go in and exchange all their meters so that they were all smart meters is a very, very expensive thing to do. So while the cost of the meter might not be much, the technology, so all those smart meters then have to have some sort of software package and interface for the owner operator to read them. So we're talking tens of thousands of dollars to go through a meter rollout. So at the moment, the protection for customers is that any meter that is being used to charge for electricity must comply with the National Measurement Act.
Okay. That's
Yeah.
good. Okay, so additional questions again. Where would somebody find the standing offer price?
So the standing offer price, if you were in an Energex connected area, you basically Google. It's the quickest way if you've got internet access. You would Google Origin Energy standing offer price and follow their links until you get to that value.
Okay.
Ergon have gazetted rates. Their Queensland Competition Authority still sets their tariff, so it might be easier to find if you're in the Ergon area, but Origin, it'll usually link to that Energy Made Easy website where you'll then find the Origin standing offer.
How does a resident in an embedded network register for life support?
It is the same process as on market. So they would get receive the forms from the energy seller. They go and get their certificates, submit that back to the operator, and then that must be shared. So it's got to be shared so the retailer will receive it, the operator of that network needs to get it, and then also they need to advise Energex so that Energex is also aware that there may be people in there that require life support.
Okay. And can residents of embedded networks apply for hardship payments or like no interest loans, those kind of things?
I wouldn't know about the no interest loans. The only one that I'm aware of when we look to hardship is that Home Energy Emergency Assistance Scheme. It is relatively easy to apply, but it's not for people who are experiencing long-term financial distress. It really is for someone that's had a once-off incident in the last 12 months. So medication costs, their car broke, they needed to buy a new fridge, but that's the primary one that we look to. I don't know a lot about the others.
And I think that they've added into that is the death of a spouse as well in that one I might be wrong there, but I think that's another factor for consideration. What about pensioners? Pensioners get obviously additional. If you're a pension card holder, you can get money off your rates, off your rego, off your stuff like that, and electricity bills if you have live in your own place. Would that apply for an embedded network customer if they're a pensioner?
Yeah, absolutely. So that's the first concession and rebates that we spoke about. So that is the Queensland government one. It is a daily rate of about $1.05 per day that's applied. So anyone that's eligible, it is a little bit of a different process. It's still very manual, hard copy based signing of paper. As soon as they move into the property, they should be told that they're eligible to access those sorts of rebates and concessions. There's a form that they need to fill out with all their, CRNs and what their eligibility criteria is. They sign that form once and give it to the operator. The operator then will lodge that form and then a form each time they get their bill to say how many people were eligible for this period. Yeah.
Okay. And this person has said that they've never actually seen a copy of their village operator's hardship policy. Are they required to just provide it, or is it on the onus of the individual to request it?
I believe, and I've got the guideline open at the moment. So there's condition 1 is about the information provision. So I think they're meant to tell them of the existence and then for no charge supply a copy if it's requested.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And then also, how would a person know which of the 28 conditions apply to their particular village?
So that is something that they would have to go to the AER website for. It is all publicly available. So once they can confirm that their seller is of a certain class, the one guideline will then tell them which conditions are that their seller is subject to, and that one guideline then goes through and lists all the core conditions and the sub conditions that are associated.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, good. And then this person has also asked, does having solar panels on a retirement village tower block, is it an advantage to individual meters? So I think maybe if people in the village are individually metered, but the village has solar, maybe on a community centre or on the top of, if it's a high rise, perhaps they have it on the high rise.
Yeah, and it will. So it depends on how. So I'm thinking about a high-rise building. The panels are on the roof. They're probably owned by the network owner. Now those people are mostly R2 class. So that just means they're not reliant on what the owner is being charged at the gate meter. So the benefit for them, there's no real benefit to a unit, account holder within that building, because it's really benefiting the person that invested in that asset.
Yeah.
Some people in an R4 class, some of that energy is being circulated and distributed, but doesn't mean that they benefit at the gate meter, because usually it's about the cost to supply the village. So if that is reducing the cost, they may see some benefit, but usually it's about the person who's investing in that product or asset.
Okay. Thank you. So it says there's another question here about who owns the individual meter, and if it's faulty, who has to replace it?
So if you have moved into a retirement village and the meter already exists, then that will be for the network owner operator. There's all different scenarios that they list out in the network exemption, though. So if you were just about to get solar panels and you needed to have your meter upgrade, you might be responsible for those costs. So there's a few different exemptions, and it really needs to come, you'd have to look at it specifically for that person, that site, and that address.
Okay.
Yeah, the scenario. I suppose the other thing when we were talking about solar as well, there's nothing in the guidelines that says that somebody who has their own system on their roof will receive a feed-in tariff like a person who is on market. And that's something that we get a lot of questions about as well, because they might have moved from a standalone house with solar. They would get them 14 cents, 4 cents, or maybe they were receiving 44 cents under a government scheme.
Yeah.
They move into their retirement village and solar's there. It doesn't mean that they will have that same benefit. They may receive no credits at all.
Okay, that's interesting. Thank you
Yeah.
for that. If a resident is not happy with their network operator, can they elect to be wired out?
I would think that would be very, very difficult. So most of the rules around the network rely on a parent-child connection. So the parent meter and the child connection meter. So that's usually where that power of choice comes into play. To be wired out of an embedded network involves the distributor. You need to then have a separate point of attachment. You would have to be able to access a point of attachment. So a village, if you're in the middle, the cost to run those wires all the way out to that main network is never going to be a benefit to anybody. I think it would be highly unlikely, but we know there might be situations that it could happen, because I've seen it written in the guideline. But for a normal residential retirement village in Brisbane, it would be very, very unlikely.
Okay. And are village operators allowed to profit off the pricing margins that they charge?
So that will also come down to some of that Queensland or jurisdictional based legislation. There's nothing in the guideline that says they can't. And we know that the AER, suggests shadow pricing, even for network. But there will be those other acts like the Manufactured Homes Act. I think retirement village, there's some different rules around what they can and can't do with their profit margins and things like that. So we wouldn't know any of that background.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. And this person has just said that on the front page of the electricity bill, it highlights the amount due and the date that it's due.
Mhm.
The amount doesn't include any credits, and that all appears. So all the credits appear on the third page of the bill. So you have to flick through to see what you're entitled to.
Uh-huh.
This person's network told them that it's according to the legislation, and he's wondering why the front page of amount due doesn't include any credits applied to that bill. So why isn't like your basic financial information
Mm.
on the front
On
page?
the front. And I suppose because we know if someone's come from an on-market standalone supply arrangement, they are subject to different legislation where, the Better Bills guideline says you must have this information here. Page 3 must have this. In the guideline, though, it basically says the bill must include. It doesn't say that it needs to be, in bold on page 1 and things like that, as long as the information is there for someone to reasonably be able to identify. And there are a number of things that must be written on the bill. But yeah, it doesn't go into the same amount of detail as that Better Bills guideline does for on market.
Okay, so embedded network customers, that Better Bills, that's not the same. They're not
No,
to adhere to that standard. Okay.
No, that's it. Unless they were, because we do know that retailers have moved into embedded network space, and that's when they would be looking at that Better Builds guideline, but their system's already set up for that. Some of these embedded network operators have got, a system that's very, very, base level. This is what you're paying. This is how we worked it out. And this is what your carryover balance and your payments were. Yeah, so it's just about the cost of systems and upgrades.
Okay, so we might flick back. I've got a couple of minutes left, so I might just flick back to the last two slides. Oh, I think I'm going forward. Oh gosh, hold on.
Mhm.
Here we go. Oh, I was going forward. Silly me. The last two slides. I think it is the pricing and the variations.
Uh-huh.
So I think this person is interested in, I don't know if you can see the mouse moving around, but
Yeah.
the breakdown of
Uh-huh.
so this supply charge and this per kilowatt and then bundled up into this.
hmm
The interest is, and jump into that person in the Q&A if I'm leading everyone down the garden path here, but I think
Yep.
a bit of a better understanding of how that can be bundled and how that can be broken up to better understand
Okay.
that would be.
Okay. So when we look to this condition and we know that there's that conflicting legislation, sometimes the owner of the park might give us the bill and it might say something like they had to pay $10,000 for that month.
Mhm.
On the gate meter, they've registered 200 kilowatt hours. So basically, what they do is divide $10,000 by 200 kilowatt hours, and that becomes the price per kilowatt hour for everybody in the park.
Mhm.
So you can see because that bill includes 200 kilowatt hours at 30 cents plus, maybe $5,000 in network charges, it means that one tariff charge includes the network and usage component. So if we were looking at, and I'll just use an example of 48.52 cents per kilowatt hour, if someone came to me and said they're charging me higher than the local standing retail offer, I would unbundle it by looking to the 35.24. I would look at the usage first. So I would say, how many kilowatt hours did you have? 100. Okay, 100 times 35.24 cents takes me to, $35 or whatever it might be. And then whatever is left, we deem to be the network portion of their charge. So if it had been separately itemized, we could say 100 kilowatt hours by 35.2 cents, $30 was left. And if we break that down over 30 days, it's way less than $1. So does that sort of break down how we might look at it and unbundle it?
It does. I haven't received any feedback on the Q&A yet.
Yeah.
Sure that if we've got any more, and we will package everybody. We'll package some of this up and send it all out with the other slides that we hadn't got to showing yet. Have got some more resources.
Yeah.
And we do like to post webinar as well, pull together everybody's Q&As. It does take us about a week or so, and add the answers into like a PDF, and we send them out as well. So you will get additional information after this. So yeah, Okay, well, that was really comprehensive. Thank you so much for that. And thank you, everybody, for your questions. I know just being out in the community and talking to people, these are kind of the ones that we get. I'll just run through and make sure. Did you want to run through this specifically, or are you happy for us to send this out to everybody?
Yeah, it just includes some of the other ombudsman schemes. So you can see the Commonwealth, taxation, financial complaints authority, and telecommunications. So just for different, a lot of people will just call us and we might tell them, you need to go talk to the telecommunications ombudsman or the Commonwealth ombudsman. So it's a really good card to have.
Great. We'll if it's all right with you, we'll send that out to everybody as a PDF. And then obviously there's some resource links here, which if you're also okay with us sending them out, we'll send them out to everybody.
Yeah. Yep.
I'll just double check I didn't miss anything. No, we're good. So okay, that was really comprehensive. So basically it's a lot of math involved in living in an embedded network, it seems. And some cost, evidently.
Yeah.
That was awesome. Thank you so much for your time, both today and for prepping for this. If nobody else has any other questions, I will let Gail go.
Thanks, Kayleen. Thanks for inviting us.
No worries, and thank you
Yeah,
so much. We really appreciate it.
not a problem at all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye.